Bob, welcome to 12 Geniuses.
Good to be here. Look forward to the dialogue.
I'm excited to have you. Let's get started with your background. Tell us who you are, what you've been doing for the last handful of decades during your career.
I describe myself as a typical business background, accounting degree from Indiana, MBA from Michigan, joined Price Waterhouse, and was doing well in public accounting when my dad invited me to join the family business in 1969. So I kind of left the professional world to join a family business, which was pretty much a broken 100-year-old company that my dad had invested in the 50s. So they made machinery for the brewing industry. So typical business background, then running after public accounting for 2 years, then being a steward of an older family company.
We are celebrating the 10th anniversary of the book you co-wrote. It's called Everybody Matters, The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family. What do you mean by caring for your people?
Simon Sinek, who's one of our biggest supporters, described leadership and parenting. It's identical. Caring is not being nice any more than parenting is being nice. Caring is making sure that those people in your span of care have a chance to feel safe, valued, and that they have a future. So I would say to you that caring, and it's what we want for our kids. We want them to be who they're intended to be and appreciated for that. That's what we want for our 12,000 team members, is to see them as somebody's precious child that is in our care and that we allow them to be who they're intended to be through our business organization.
How do you get that sort of culture across 12,000 people?
Well, it's not only 12,000 people. It's from China to India to Serbia to France to Japan. So just for an audience standpoint, what I'm going to talk about is not an American issue. It is a global issue. We have it in America, but we find it's true. And so what we're really trying to do, I always say a leader's number one responsibility is to give those people in their care a grounded sense of hope for the future so they can decide to get married, to have children, buy a home, that they can trust us, that they have a future with us as long as that works out for us both. And so my primary responsibility is to make sure they have a future. And so how do I do that? It's not about, again, it's much bigger than being nice. Care, that's why we use the word care. It's about making sure we have a business model that is going to be robust and give them a sense of safety, that we're not going to end up with issues where we have to hurt people to make the numbers work. Like we're seeing a tremendous amount of mass layoffs right now between UPS and Amazon and that, all these companies. And how would you like to be asked to join these legendary companies and then one day walks up and says, you know what, even though we invited you into the company, we've told you what a great future you have, we need to improve our earnings and we can do without you. It's devastating for the people impacted. And so my hope is that we never have to do that to somebody, that we design a business model so robust that we don't have to use our people to make numbers. We care for our people to give them a future and they feel safe and valued.
Now, there have been downturns during your tenure as CEO. The COVID-19 pandemic, you must have experienced some financial uncertainty. How did you deal with that? How did you deal with post 9/11 or the recessions of 2008, 2009?
Well, the one that is talked about the most is, so a tiny bit prior to 08, 09, we had developed what we called the guiding principles of leadership, our constitution of our stewardship of our people. It was kind of an eclectic process. And so we actually articulated that we measure success by the way we touch the lives of people. That was our overriding statement. So, and I had been out because when we developed that, our chief people officer, Ron Spencer, said, Bob, a lot of companies have good statements on the wall. They just don't live them. She didn't mean it as a challenge, but I took it as a challenge. And I started flying around the world, sitting down with team members, said, this is what we believe in. How are we doing? So I had this cadence of talking about our values, and 08 happens, unprecedented in my history. And I go to my board. So it happened in the September, October time of '08. I go to my board meeting in January and I walk into the boardroom. And the first thing my board says to me is, don't you need to lay off people? And I said, why do you say that? And they said, well, because everybody is laying off people. I said, well, we got a pretty good backlog. I checked, right now I think we're okay. And they said, are you sure you're not being an optimist, Bob? And I said, I don't think so. So maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, I was in Italy visiting our operations in Italy, and I got a text that our largest single customer, who had a big order in our backlog that was giving us work, called to say, stop, stop. It's one thing to not get a new order. It's one thing to lose the orders that you've gotten. And I sat in my hotel room because prior to embracing our guiding principle of leadership, I would have done what everybody else did. That's what we're trained to do. It's not personal, but Mary, Bill, we're going to have to let you go because our orders have dropped by 30 or 40%. I'm sorry, but we just don't have the work, and financially we can't afford you. And I was trained that that's what we do. It's not pleasant, but it's a responsibility to respond to these economic challenges by letting people go. And I sat in my hotel room thinking about this journey I'd begun of the guiding principle of leadership to care for people. And I said, if we let people go in this crisis, we are going to hurt people. And it caused me to think in a different way for the first time in my life. And I said, what would a caring family do if a member of the family had a crisis? We'd all take a little pain so that nobody had to take a lot of pain. It led me to an idea that I'd never heard of, never thought of, but it led me to say, what if we all took a month off without pay? Okay, whenever you want. So there's some value to you when it's when your kids are off school or your parents. And so I text back to the United States. I said, look, I got an idea. By the time I get back to the States, help me understand how we could do it. We're going to ask everybody to take a month off without pay. By the time I landed, they were ready to disseminate this to our global organization. You can't believe the response. It was unbelievably positive because people had this cloud over there. Oh my God, are we going to get let go? And what does it mean? And all of a sudden the sun came out and said, and the interesting thing, because we'd never tried it, never heard of it, the reaction was unbelievable. Some people who had, I'll call it, been around a long time, well off in their life, said to a young person, I know you just had a baby. This job's important to you. You can't really afford to take them out. I'll take 2 of your weeks. Okay. I didn't ask people to do it. Never occurred. People did that spontaneously. Okay. And volunteered to take somebody else's time. And morale went up dramatically because we're safe. And the other beauty is, you say, well, how do people feel about losing a month's pay? It's a little bit like contributing to a charity. They didn't feel the company was doing it for us. They were doing it for their friends to keep their jobs. So it was an act of benevolence,
Mhm.
of caring for others. It was amazing the way people reacted to that. And so we got, who knew what the economic crisis was? We got through that crisis without letting anybody go. And as normality started to settle in 9 months, 12 months, whatever it was later, our business just almost exploded with demand. Why? Because we had validated our culture, we had kept our talent, and we were ready. We didn't have to go hire people and train people. And it was a major statement to our global company that we believe in what we say. We measure success by the way we touch the lives of people. So it was the first time we had ever done that. And the reaction was, Simon Sinek talks about it all over the world because that's the biggest story, because look at what's happening right now in our country. Mass layoffs. Do you think those people are thinking about the people that they're going to lay off? Or they're just looking at the severance package that they have to give them by law? Okay. It is really horrible, because I guarantee you those boards do not talk about psychological damage they're doing to these people that they say, sorry,
The short-term view is we have this pain right now, which is going to be financial pain that we're going to experience because we don't have the demand to support all of these people. But what's going to happen when demand does increase? Like you said, a number of months later, demand did increase. You started getting orders and you had the team in place, right, to fulfill those orders. And they had coalesced in such a way that they felt like a family. They felt this pro-social behavior. They were willing to step up and commit. I'm sure there were times when people might have had to work longer and all sorts of
People were
things.
willing I mean, the way they came together because they felt safe. Okay, Donna Hicks talks about dignity and the poverty of dignity. She said one of the manifestations of that, people don't feel safe, not with their fingers, their eyes, their toes. People live in fear. They're going to be let go, fired. Okay. And again, I, I guarantee you in these large, very profitable companies that are laying off tens of thousands of people, it is done for one reason, to give the investors what they want, more profits. Okay, it is not, and there's no human part of that discussion. It's because we're bored. The share price, our EBITDA multiple, what other companies are doing. I guarantee you, the reason you see all these companies doing it is because right now you can do it, and everybody will say, "Well, everybody's doing that, so good job." And so nobody talks about the human impact of doing that. Oh, they'll find another job. We'll pay them 6 weeks of pay, and they'll find another job. There's a good job market. I guarantee you that is not. What I say to you, it is purely a financial decision to improve profitability. And right now, I'm just looking at one of the news. Well, it's because AI. We're going to replace thousands of these jobs with AI. Oh, your public relations people told you to say that because everyone's worried about AI. Okay, AI is not going to. Natural attrition would allow you to, over time, adjust to AI's contribution. Okay, but we don't teach companies to care about their people. They care about their investors, shareholder supremacy. And so they're not bad people. They're not taught to care. They're taught to use people to achieve goals.
How do you get caring to be entered into the results conversation? How do you measure that? Or how do you make it a component of how leaders are evaluated?
Some people say, how do you justify this expense of this university where teach human skills? How do you justify this? And I said, did you just ask me how do I justify caring? I mean, seriously. And I looked back at him and said, how do you justify not caring? When you look at the people that you have the privilege of leading, knowing the psychological damage you're going to do to them, do you care about those people? Because if you wouldn't fire your kids or lay off your kids, but you'll lay off engineers, if you see them as functions, you treat them as functions. If you see them as somebody's precious child that's in your care for 40 hours a week, it changes everything. I don't need to justify caring. Okay. And I would say to you, have you ever heard a company justify the procedures they go through for safety in terms of safety glasses and hard to? No, why? Well, because we don't want it, injuries. Why don't you want injuries? Because our workers' compensation cost goes up. I think is disgusting that somebody would have to justify caring for the people they have the privilege of leading. If you heard the feedback we get that fills your heart with, oh my God, business could be a powerful force for good in the world if we simply had leaders who cared about the people. These are not bad people. It's a bad system that is totally based upon monetary gains. And we use people. We use people to achieve those gains and we discard them at will when we need to. Our capitalism system is broken. Our education system does not teach you the responsibility of caring for those people. I thought if I paid you a fair salary with benefits and you joined our company and shared your gifts, that was the exchange. And when I didn't need you anymore, that's just the way life is. And it's a transactional relationship. not a stewardship relationship. So, as you've heard me say, business could be the most powerful force for good in the world if we had leaders who genuinely knew how to care for the people they had the privilege of leading.
I believe business has transformed the world over the last 200 years. Looking back at 1800, 90% of the world was living in abject poverty. And because of the Industrial Revolution, because of business, because of all of these magical innovations that have happened over the last 225 years, we are where we are. And that's with business running very, very sloppily. To your point, not treating people well, treating them in a transactional manner. And I see the future as being such that not only can we continue this not growth, but transformation and improving the world, but improving the psyche of the individuals who show up for work. Because in my background, I mentioned to you before we get started, I spent a quarter century measuring employee engagement. I know 60% of the workforce absolutely hates what they do. They just dislike it. They dread going to work. They're either disengaged or actively disengaged, strongly disengaged. And that is a huge opportunity. And it's not just in the US, which would affect 100 million people of the 160 million people who are working. It's all around the world.
Your statistics are very much in line with mine and in my speeches around the world. Because as we began this journey, we got public information. So I've been sharing this. We live in a country where 88% of people in this country feel they work for an organization that does not care about them. 88%.
Mm.
Statistically, 3 out of 4 people are disengaged in what they're doing. When I talk to CEOs of companies, I say, "You're all worried about the cost of healthcare? You are the problem." Okay, 74% of all illnesses are chronic. The biggest cause of chronic illness is stress, and the biggest cause of stress is work. Jeffrey Pfeiffer at Stanford wrote a book, Dying for a Paycheck, and he doesn't mean anxious to get it. He estimates we're killing 120,000 people a year, just the ones that die, not much the ones that have cancer and survive or heart issue. We're killing 120,000 people a year of work-related stress. Okay, why do I have to justify? Oh, should I justify? I'm going to reduce the death rate. Okay, when you look at the people, the lens that again, the way I was trained in business, what I experienced in business, I saw people as functions for my success. I needed engineers, accountants, manufacturing team members, and sales team members. I needed them for my success. I was a nice guy. We had a nice company. But the day my lens flipped and said, these people aren't functions. They're somebody's precious child that's been placed in my care for 40 hours a week. And the way I treat them will profoundly affect their health and the way they go home and treat their spouse and their kids. Okay. And we said, how are we going to take our leaders around the world and give them the skills to care? Not the skills to use people to produce results, but the skills to care for people while we're creating results. And so we created a university. So it is a system. So you're right. The Industrial Revolution, which Raj Sisodia, my co-author, wrote a great deal about in Conscious Capitalism, is credited improving healthcare, standard of living, communities were built around factories. That's right. And our universities became skills factories because these great entrepreneurs in the Industrial Revolution, I said, I need salespeople, I need engineers, I need accountants. As organizations develop, I need these skills and I'll pay them well. So we thought this is going to create happiness, right? People are going to make money. They're going to live healthier lives. They're going to educate their kids better. They're going to live in nicer homes. And guess where we are today? We have the most prosperous economy in the world. And we have the highest level of depression, anxiety, and suicide we've ever had.
Yeah.
Why? We have unprecedented prosperity because money does not create happiness. Okay.
No way.
It may give you a healthcare system to deal with your issues, but it doesn't create a sense of meaning and purpose. And Tom Friedman said it beautifully in an article in the New York Times a couple of years ago. More than a poverty of money, we have a poverty of dignity. When people feel used rather than cared for, there's a sense of humiliation. And when they feel humiliated, you'll see anger and unrest like you've never seen before. What are we seeing in this prosperous
Anger and
economy?
unrest.
Anger and unrest.
Absolutely.
And we think it's a cell phone or it's drugs. But if and again, Raj Sisodia told me, my co-author, that there's a 20% increase in heart attacks on Monday morning at 5 a.m. when people have to go back to work. 65% of people would give up a salary increase if they could fire their boss. 65%. Okay. One of the things, and this is a revelation, in my education, it never occurred to me the way I would run Barry-Wehmiller would affect the people who worked at Barry-Wehmiller's personal life. But when we tried to transform managers and leaders and started teaching human skills, 95% of the feedback is how it affected their marriage and their relationship with their kids. It never occurred to me. Your personal life is I don't have anything to do with the quality of your marriage or your. The greatest feedback in this journey of the last 22 years as we try to create a caring organization is the impact on their marriage, their health, and their children.
And I'm gonna take it a little further because I thought about this the last 10 years. We sold my company in 2016. And since then, I've thought a lot about what we had done in terms of helping people engage their employees. And it was really to try to benefit the organization, right? Benefit the bottom line, retain employees, help them perform at a higher level. That's what we talked about. But I think we missed this whole other section, which is when an employee goes home engaged, knowing that they've done great work, they're a better husband, they're a better wife, mother, sister, community member. So,
Yep.
there's this propelling force that we haven't been talking about that you just hit on that I think is so vital. And now you're 12,000 people scaling that around the world. Their families are better off, their marriages are better off, their health is better off, their children are better off, and their communities are better off. You don't go home as a disengaged employee and then go volunteer and show up to
Yeah.
be your best self in your community or among your friends group.
I think if I told you so, and again, this is not an American issue. We deal all over the world. And I have these global calls with team members on Zoom. Okay, I have 20, 30, 40, 50 people on a call. And I asked them, what is the experience? We had a gentleman from Lucca, Italy the other day talk about what it has meant to his marriage, what it has meant to his relationship with his son. It was, I mean, you almost cried. I'll give got another example. I was having a listening session up in northern Wisconsin in our big plant with relatively new team members, and everybody introduced themselves. And back, young lady, looked like she's 30, said, "Mr. Chapman, I've been here 6 months. I work in the accounting department." And she said, "And I just took your empathetic listening class at our university, a 3-day class." And she said, "I realized I'm not a good mother to my children." I mean, can you imagine how my heart felt? And the way she said it was so beautiful. And so I would say to you that in this 22-year journey, we have the stories I've heard of the impact on people's personal lives, their relationship with their parents, their kids, the healing power that business could be in the world, where we have people for 40 hours a week and we send them home. If we said our goal is to send our team members home, knowing that who they are and what they do matters, so they can be better stewards, they can be healthier and better parents, better family members, community members. So business could be, it is not, it could, it's just the opposite right now. We have economic prosperity, we have no human prosperity. But we thought if people make money, they'll be happy. That's what we thought. They buy cars, they buy home, but it is horrible what's going on. And these mass destruction, these mass layoffs they're doing right now. I mean, I heard this one company, large company, public company, when they decided they needed to do a mass layoff, they basically deactivated people's badges. So when you walk up to some building, that is degrading. I mean, can you imagine treating people like that?
Yeah, you talked about dignity earlier, and that is just saying, "We've used you up. You are no longer valuable. You have no we have no use for you. You have no dignity. Go." It's abhorrent.
And these are not bad people. I know some company, I know some of these executives, faithful people with nice families. But the game of business, if you see people as employees, engineers, accountants, and you treat them as functions for your success, you can dehumanize this process of mass laughs. Well, because if you're a board, let's just assume you're a board, and investment advisors, all boards have investment advisors who look at the market and the investor community, comes to you and says, look, there's an opportunity for you to give me about 10,000 people. We'll announce it to the public and the market will reward you. Now, I'm a board. I look at the share price. I look at my stewardship of the shareholders. This is the recommendation. I'm an outside group based on what they've seen. And so the board says, okay, because if we don't do it, some activist investor will come in, Nelson Peltz, whoever, come in and say, I'll do it too if you don't do it. So the
Yeah,
boards are kind of stuck
yeah.
in this, we're measured by our share price. Everybody else in the tech center is doing this right now. Now's the time to do it. I guarantee you they do not discuss the impact on the 5,000, 10,000 people. And studies show, psychological studies, it's devastating to be somebody walk up to you and say, sorry, it's not personal, but we got to make our numbers and we can do without you. Even though we recruited you and offered you a job and gave you a future, it is horrible. So we're spiraling down, chasing economic value, destroying human value. And nobody knows how to stop this spiral down. Okay. Because again, it is destroying human value. And just think of this. So you avoided that layoff. Hey, what did you think? Because Mary, who sat next to you, was pregnant and having a baby and she got laid off and Bill got laid off. How do you feel about the company?
Yeah.
If you said,
Oh,
do you feel safe?
I'm sure there's
Okay.
survivor's guilt. I'm sure there's all sorts of emotions that people go through.
My
Absolutely.
son went through this in the consulting field and he felt horrible. He hated the company because of the way they treated the
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And he couldn't wait to get out of that company. So, and the other thing that's logical that we found, so in terms of employee engagement, productivity, all those things, attracting talent, when people don't feel valued and, they are, just doing what they need to do to get by, do you think people are actually sharing their gifts with these companies when they feel that way about the company? I guarantee they're doing just what it takes to get by and would love to. So, we didn't justify this. We didn't have a problem that we were aware of. We just became aware that we could have a dramatic impact on people's health and their life if we learned how to care. And again, the other thing we've learned is you can't ask people to care. You have to teach them how to care. Like everything else, it is a skill that is teachable. So we teach in BW University.
It's interesting. A friend of mine says that you can read all sorts of books about playing a flute, but you actually have to play a flute in order to play a flute. And isn't it the same with what you're talking about here? You can read about caring, but it actually takes some reps, and maybe it's a little bit having a difficult conversation with an employee, but doing it in a caring manner might take a little practice to do it. It's a contact type sport.
Yeah. Again, I think I've given 300 speeches over the last 4 or 5 years around the world, all MBA students, conferences, healthcare, military, Congress, United Nations. So I've seen pretty much every part of our society and many parts of these same societies in the world. And nobody ever debates what I just said to you.
Mhm.
Ever.
Mhm.
If we walk outside and we see the moon, you're not going to debate the moon is up there, right? But that doesn't mean you know how to get there. Okay. So I would say to you, whether it's McKinsey or Harvard or Simon Sinek or Simon, or Raj Sisodia, any of these incredible thought leaders in our field, they love what we're doing. They just have no idea how to do it. How do you go from using to caring? Well, we built that bridge in our university, but it is a huge leap of faith for a leader to go from the comfort of numbers to the feeling of caring.
Bob, let me ask you a couple questions. I'm sure listeners are thinking this right now. How do you deal with poor performance?
Every time I give a talk, everywhere in the world, that is one of the top three
Of
questions.
course.
Okay. And because we have a world that focuses on the negative.
And it's
So,
a fear. It's a
and
fear-based thing, right? I'm going to put you on a performance improvement plan. You're going to
yeah.
do this or that. But I'm assuming you have a different way of talking about performance.
Yes. The way I answer that question to audiences, and I get it in churches and schools and everywhere, is treat those people who have a performance issue like you would like your son or daughter treated if they had it. And the reaction I always get, oh, that would be different. Why is it different? That's somebody's son or daughter you're treating with. Okay. When you see people not as functions, okay, because sometimes that performance is more you and your leadership than it is the individual. When, I mean, seriously, when you 65% of all people would give up a salary increase to fire their boss, who says that their leader is knows how to get the best and create an environment for them? So how many times do again, 65% of people would give up a salary increase to fire their boss. Do we give their boss a second chance? So again, it's this feeling that that guy doesn't get it. Oh, really? That guy doesn't get it. What have you done to try and understand that individual and create an environment where they could plus? So the beauty is when you embrace what we're talking about, you get this collective positive attitude that people start blossoming and the talent. I mean, let me tell you something. The talent we now attract from major companies around the country, around the world, we just hired like 230 engineers in our consulting company and we flipped the switch and we had people lined up because of our culture. Okay. Our customers love our culture. That they talk about our culture more than our machinery because they again, I had this one major customer say, I've never been treated like this. My company doesn't treat me like you. So again, I ask you, what is the risk of caring? What is the risk of caring?
Yeah, there's no risk.
To me, again, if you've seen the thousands of and I normally get a standing ovation after this talk because it goes to people's hearts. They know what we're doing isn't right. They just don't know how to change the system, which is a numbers system.
We have become so isolated in our personal lives. Many of us are very lonely, and you saw the Surgeon General's report a number of years ago that loneliness is at epidemic levels. And what you're doing is creating this culture where you have this.
Family environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
A gentleman named General Flynn, who developed leadership in the Pentagon, who wrote Simon Sinek's forward to his book, came out to one of our major operations, spent the day with Simon talking to our people. And he said something that I think your audience will find interesting. We sat down at the end of the day, Simon and General Flynn and I, and General Flynn said, you know what I found interesting in the conversations with your people is they described it as a family. He said they didn't say it was like a family. They specifically said it's a family. We ended up having a discussion. None of these people are related to each other. They're not brother, we don't have descendants here. And we realized that in our society, the word family should mean the place of ultimate safety and care. When people use the word family, they use it in the context not of relationship, but of feeling safe and valued. Okay. And so I would say to you that how could any leader of any company not want that for the people that they have the privilege of leading? So we've learned, and that's why we have the internal university, you have to teach human skills. So empathetic listening, how to recognize the goodness in others, and seizing the opportunity to serve others, those three classes. But remember, a point I want to make, though, is part of our stewardship of caring is making sure we have a robust business model so people feel safe. Some people say, you need to get the right people on the bus. And I say, not really. What you need to do is build a safe bus, which is your business model, that has drivers who are your leaders who know where they're going and how to drive that bus safely. Then anybody on that bus is going to be safe. So the foundation of stewardship in our culture is a business model where people feel safe. Okay. Not just not being laid off, but the company's not going to encounter some financial challenge that will force us to hurt people. When people feel safe and valued, they they rise to a different level of contribution and which attracts more people. And we have a country, as you know, that we have TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. Get the hell out of this place, have a beer, and kill the pain. My vision, I imagine, is that we end up with a TGIM. Thank goodness it's Monday. And that is what we are experiencing.
Yeah.
Again, we have listening sessions now with Zoom all over the world, and we hear exactly the same thing all over the world. People simply want to know they matter. It's not about a 5-year award for working with us or top salesman. It is a skill of recognizing the goodness in people and holding it up and saying thank you. This cadence of looking for the goodness, not the brokenness, but the goodness. Oh, Joe got fired or Mary got, laid off. We spend so much time looking for the goodness that people are in an environment where they feel safe and valued, and it attracts people that you would want to attract, and it encourages people to share their gifts fully.
I'm curious to know what you feel the future of leadership looks like as we enter the unknown. And when I think of the unknown, I'm thinking of this robotics, AI fueled economy that we were talking about in the past, where we could potentially experience a century's worth of change in a decade, what futurists call this compressed century. What does the future of leadership look like to you?
Future leaders in our goal will have human skills and academic skills to be good stewards of the people who they have the privilege of leading. Okay. So the future leadership, and in that responsibility, when they look at this evolution of technology from AI to all these and all the other issues, tariffs, and all international competition, those leaders, because they care about the people, all stakeholders, you've got to create a business model that's going to embrace the evolution of technology, not be threatened by the evolution of technology. So I always say all technology can be used for good or bad. Okay. My entire career, I remember in the early days of my careers in the 1960s, we could justify buying a machine tool that would eliminate 4 jobs because one person running a machine tool 24 hours a day could outproduce, and we could justify buying it on eliminating the work of others. Okay. Faxes came along, internet came along, iPhone came along. When I was a young man, you dictated a note to your secretary. She came back with a dictation. You reviewed it. She retyped it. You sent it and mailed it. I haven't dictated a letter in years. And so technology has always been impacting our business. But it can, a car is a great way for you to go see your mother in a foreign town that you couldn't have done with a horse and buggy. It can also drive through a mall and kill people. Any technology can be used for good or bad. I personally believe AI is going to enrich our access to information and facts, and enrich our ability to be better stewards of our various businesses by capturing this phenomenal advance in technology, just like the cell phone is, between faxes and emails and, you know, so I honestly believe, yeah, I can say, oh, AI is going to replace jobs. Some of the layoff announcements I've seen with these major firms, they're saying, oh, AI is coming, so we're not going to need so many people. That's bullshit. Okay. Their advisors say, blame it on AI because that's kind of that mystery box. And then we overhired and we're adjusting now and then we're going to be more profitable. You read through these announcements of these massive layoffs and say, well, we're not going to need so many people. Well, okay. So really, I'll be darned. We actually have a decline in the birth rate in this country. We have a decline in the high school graduation in this country. And we're worried about AI. We need these tools to continue to be able to advance our technology and curing medical issues, access to information. So using the technology is more important to me than, oh my God, it's going to do this. We're not going to need people. So leaders have got to understand the dynamics of tariffs, of AI, all foreign competition, changing the market, and constantly share a message of where we're going to give people hope that they're not worried about that.
Well, and I would say that what we've talked about for the last 50 minutes is leadership has to become more human. All of the things that you're talking about, building trust, creating relationships, having empathy, without these things, you're not a leader.
You're a boss. So remember, and my hope is that you don't refer to people as employees. They're team members. Okay, we don't have bosses, supervisors, managers. We have leaders, coaches, and mentors. Nobody wants a boss. Nobody wants a manager. And we talk about firing people. Do you know where that came from? It came from the French firing squad.
Oh,
boom,
my gosh.
you got it. Why would we describe firing somebody? Why would you use that word? Would you fire your best friend's daughter from a company? Or in parenting, we call it hard love. Okay. Sometimes the consequences of things are hard, but as a leader, as a parent, you do the right thing for your kids. So again, the language of business is so broken, it's ridiculous. And the words we use affect the way we behave. We don't talk about the head count in our company. We talk about the heart count.
I'm sure there's a leader listening, maybe here in Minneapolis, maybe there in St. Louis, maybe in Belgrade or in Cairo or Nairobi, hopefully somewhere in Johannesburg, perhaps, who's really finding this message appealing. So what advice do you have for a young leader who wants to be more of a caring leader? Where should they get started?
We have these events in St. Louis where we invite people in to put their toe in the water and say, is this something that I want to join you with? We're not trying to sell anybody anything. We're trying to find people who believe what we believe and want to join us in this healing journey so that business could be a powerful force for good. And we're finding a tremendous global interest in this because we have a crisis of leadership in the world. And we need to begin to shift to a human center where we actually care about the people we have the privilege of leading and begin healing this poverty of dignity, not poverty of money, poverty. And we have seen a tremendous interest in our message. And we would welcome any of you to take steps that cost virtually nothing to say, is this something I want to know more about?
Bob, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your time and thank you for being a genius.